Hey guys, it's Jesus McDonald here. Real quick, and before we get started, if you haven't subscribed to the show yet, please take a few seconds to subscribe because I don't want you missing out on any valuable content on entrepreneurship and marketing. And also, please leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. We definitely need your help to reach a wider audience. Now, I'd like to introduce you to my next guest, Ellen Cookman. Ellen, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, AC. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. I want to start by giving our listeners and viewers a short bio of who you are, and then we'll dive right into the questions. Sound like a plan?
That's great.
Now, for those that don't know Ellen Cookman is the owner of Cookman Law, PC in Palo Alto, California. Ellen is a certified specialist in estate planning, trust, and probate law from the California State Bar Board of Legal Specialization. She received her JD from UC Berkeley School of Law and her LL.M in estate planning, trust, and probate from Golden Gate University. Ellen lives in East Palo Alto with her husband, 2 sons, one with special needs, and a boxer pit bull mixed named Ulysses. Ellen, thank you again for your time.
Oh, you bet. You bet. Great to be here.
Yes, love your short bio. Let's dive right in. What inspired you to open up your own practice?
Well, so it's kind of a long and windy road. So after I graduated in 2003, so that's a long time ago, like 17 years ago,
Hmm.
I clerked for a year in Philadelphia. That was way too cold. So I came back to California and I worked as a litigator for 3 horrible years. I was at Morrison and Forrester, wonderful firm, but suing people over money is just not my idea of a good time. So I burned out and I went to teach for a year at a small private school called Hope Technology School in Palo Alto, California. I taught middle school math. That's kind of what I do when I don't know what I want to do with my life. I go teach for a bit, and it
Nice.
was great. And so while I was there, I attended a parent support group presentation by an attorney who was talking about special needs trusts. And I mean, it was kind of like everything that really intrigued me. You get to talk to people about who they love and what they have and help them plan for the future. It's not antagonistic. I talked with her more. She was 8 months pregnant with her third kid. So I was like, oh, you can raise a
Gosh.
kid and do this, right? And she walked out to her BMW and I'm like, oh, you can actually like support yourself doing this. This sounds better and better. So I did a search and ended up, I realized, okay, this is really a broader picture of estate planning with a special needs focus. So that
Mm.
was 12 years ago. So since then, I worked at 2 firms. I was at a firm for 4 years and then another one for 2 years. And my last firm, I really thought, okay, this is a keeper. This is where I'm going to be, but it just wasn't the right fit.
Mm.
And when I left there, I was thinking, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to be
Right.
another associate? Am I going to be of counsel somewhere? Being an associate 3 times, I don't want to do that again. So I met with a lot of really wonderful estate planning attorneys who I'm really grateful for. And I try to pay it forward now, because they were
Hmm.
so generous with their time and they were all like, you can totally do this, Ellen. And meanwhile, my husband, who was a special ed teacher, he was just laid off like 3 weeks after I left the practice. So,
Wow.
yeah, so we're like, "This better work." So I decided to
Yeah,
go my own, you know? And, it was
that's
never my
courageous.
dream. I know. I think if I knew then what I know now, I wonder, would I have done that? But anyways, I was like, "Well, let's give this a try." We got a line of credit on our house, which we had bought 5 years ago. And that's the crazy thing. Okay, so Jesus, when Scott and I first bought our house,
Hmm.
he turned to me and he goes, in 5 years, you can open your own practice and get a line of credit on the equity and it'll be great. And I was like, you're crazy. I don't want to open my own. I would never do that. Right. He was off by 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's like a prophet. It was amazing. Yeah.
That's
So
crazy.
I know. So I started my practice and immediately it was a big success. And I think a lot because I specialize in special needs planning. I'd say about half of my clients have special needs issues. And there's very few attorneys, especially in the Bay Area, who focus on that. I think people are scared off
Hmm.
by the public benefits aspects. You really have to keep up on public benefits laws and deal with the government. And then also you're dealing with families that have some real, sometimes really traumatic situations, and
Right.
might have, difficult kids, or they might be difficult themselves. And I kind of thrive on that. I like actually helping people who need the help, who are kind of left behind. So
Mm.
I've had my own practice now for 5.5 years. We're now a team of 5 people.
Awesome.
We're all,
Congratulations.
oh, thank you, thank you. Yep, we're all virtual now because of COVID-19, and I love it. It's been quite the ride.
That's awesome. Now, why did you choose estate planning? Why not go like the business attorney route? Seems like everybody goes the business attorney route.
Yeah. Well, so, when I was in law school, I didn't think I'd do any of that. I wanted to do international law. I was
Mm.
thinking, okay, so, I'm part of a terrific church, and I actually became part of that church in Tokyo. So I thought, okay, I'll go back to Asia and kind of help people get out of jail there for religious persecution. And, I had this whole idea, and then it didn't quite work out that way. But I never wanted to go into business law. I didn't take, business planning or estate planning or anything like that
Hmm.
in law school. And so it's really kind of interesting that I stumbled upon this. In fact, when I was at Morrison and Foerster, I remember one partner asking me, you really don't seem to enjoy patent litigation or commercial litigation. What do you want to do? And I was like, I really don't know. He's like, do you want to do employment law? And I'm thinking, no, I don't really want to represent the employer. Do you want to do immigration law? Well, not really. So I feel so fortunate that I've stumbled
Yeah.
upon estate planning. It's really an incredible field where you're actually helping families. And I don't feel like it's the best fit for everyone. I think you
Hmm.
really need to have a personality where you're patient. You can kind of look for cues, because you need to be able to help your clients to
Right.
feel safe around you, so they can really tell you the details that you need to put together the right plan for them.
Mm. Now, for those that don't know estate planning, what do you do?
Okay, so the big question is, what happens to your stuff when you die or if you're sick, right? And in California, if you have more than, and it's a weird number right now, more than $166,250 worth of stuff that doesn't have a beneficiary designation, or it's just titled in your name,
Hmm.
then your estate goes through the probate court system, which is horrible in California. In other states, it's much more user friendly. Like I think Texas. I'm from Philadelphia. In Pennsylvania, it's much easier. But no, it's bad here. So to avoid that, we do what's called a revocable living trust. And that's basically, you put your house in there, your bank and brokerage accounts, and upon your death, the trust says where you want things to go, how you want your kids to inherit stuff,
Mm.
who's going to manage things when you're not able to, who will be what we call the successor trustee.
Nice.
And since you have all of that mapped out, the court doesn't have to be involved. And so it avoids probate.
Mm.
So we really help pass stuff along from one generation to the next generation. Or if you don't have kids, to your favorite charities, or um, if you have kids with special needs, to pass it along to a special needs trust for that
Hmm.
child, so they can continue to receive public benefits but still have this safety net of stuff.
Right.
So that's what we do. We plan for the future, which is typically death, but
Hmm.
what happens after that, and how do we make sure that your family's taken care of even when you're not here anymore? It's interesting because I have a lot of conversations with people, like, so if you die first, then
Yeah, I
and
bet.
then if you, and people are, they're kind of shocked, like, you're talking about death. It's like, yeah, we talk about this like every day. So I try to have in my office, I have like a picture of a nice, friendly, warm yellow and orange flowers, and like something.
Right, right,
But
right.
these are difficult conversations, and yet we have to have them. So I try to guide people through that process to really think about this, but to set them up for success. So my goal is to help people sleep at night. There's enough things that you're
Right.
up at night worrying about, and how is my kid going to be taken care of if I'm not here? That our goal is to set that up so they know their kid will be taken care of well.
Right. And do you help people that don't have like kids with special needs as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'd say about half of my clients have a special needs issue and half don't. They're kind of more, typical families.
Got you. Got you. Yeah. I was just thinking, like, what if a freak accident happened? Not to create fear or anything,
Mhm.
but of just stuff happens and
Yep,
they have to figure out, funeral arrangements and everything like that, right?
that's right.
Um, Compared to something that's more predictable and you can see someone having cancer and they have X amount of,
Mhm.
time to
Yep.
live. But I was also thinking, like, my friends around my age aren't really thinking about this, or they just use the word will, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
honestly, all of them don't even have a will in place, right?
Yeah, or maybe
I'm
like a
like,
downloaded form they found or something, Yeah.
yeah, or it's like, yeah, it's a good thing to do, but there's no due date on when to do it,
Well, there is a
right?
due date, it's just when you die,
Or
and
yes,
if you knew when that was, let me take you along to Las Vegas, right? 'Cause
right.
we'll have a lot of gambling to do. No, I mean, so that's the challenge because you set this up and hopefully you don't use it for another 30, 40 years. But
Right.
what if you do need it? And it's also good for incapacity. So
Mm,
like that freak accident, if you're
right.
alive but you're really sick, then we set it up so you don't need to go to court to get what's called a conservatorship, which is a horrible, horrible process. So
Mm.
it's set up. And let me address that will thing because I think a lot of people imagine it like in that movie Gran Torino, where the
That's a
the
great movie.
lawyer, right? Oh, I
Yeah.
love that movie. Yeah, but the lawyer sits down and I hereby bequest my Gran Torino to so and so, right?
Right.
It's not really that way, and when we do what the revocable living trust to avoid probate, we also do what are called pour over wills. So basically those are cleanup documents.
Mm,
So if you forgot to put something in the trust, the pour over will scoops it up and pours it into the trust. So the two work together to help avoid probate. But
so
the
one
will
of
really, oh, but also in the will, that's where you nominate guardians for
mm,
your minor kids. So that's what a lot of younger families come to me for, is they're worried, who's going to raise my kids
right.
if we're both gone, or if you're a single parent, if I'm gone, right? So those are big issues, and that's also what I don't judge anybody for waiting because I was an estate planner for 8 years before we put our trust together. And so, the cobbler has no shoes, right? But at
Yeah.
first, we didn't have anything, so we didn't care. And
Uh-huh.
then, then we bought a house, but we didn't have anyone to leave it to, so who cares? And then we had kids, and we're just trying to sleep at night, right?
Right.
And then finally, a life insurance professional, I'm meeting with him, and at the end, he goes, "So, Ellen, you have your own trust, right?" And I was like, and I go, "Well, we have durable powers of attorney and advanced healthcare directives." And he goes, "Ellen, how can you be such a hypocrite, and meet with people and yet you don't have your own?" And I was like, "You're absolutely right." So I went back to the office, drafted my own trust, and had
That's
Scott come
too
down and sign
funny.
it, right? And it was done that day, right? But we really couldn't decide on guardians,
Mm,
because that's so hard. Like, who's going to raise our kids the way we want them to be raised?
right.
Nobody's going to do that. So you really have to kind of cobble together the next best
And
solution.
and it's also hoping that they're still alive too, right?
Yeah, exactly. So don't name your parents, because they're less likely to be around,
Mm,
right? Unless
right.
they're a lot younger. So these are difficult decisions. So I'd say that, who you're going to name as successor trustee, as your guardian, these are conversations I can have with a client for half an hour, because these are really hard choices to make.
Mhm.
And a lot of times there's options that people don't really know about. For example, there's something
Right.
called a private professional fiduciary. These are individuals who are licensed by the state of California who act as trustee of trusts. They're professionals who do this. So if you don't have a family member around who's responsible, who's
Mm,
younger than you, who you can name, and you may
right.
not want to name a family member because they have their own lives, they have a lot to do, then you could name a professional. So these are the sorts of things that we walk people through so that they can know all their options.
Yeah. No, I was going back to thinking about my friends, and when we started talking about the difference between will, estate planning, trust, all
Mhm.
these things,
Yeah.
it becomes, well, which one's more important, or do you need all of them?
Yeah.
Like that's where it is.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and it's like a new language. I always try to think back to when I first heard about a trust. I mean,
Mhm.
it's such a foreign concept. It's like you don't, in grade school, you don't learn about trusts. It's basically
Mm-mm.
it's a contract between the person setting it up and the person managing it for the benefit of the beneficiary. And there's a lot of different types of trusts out there. So you kind of have to
Right.
see what trust do I need and what's the purpose of it and what am I trying to accomplish? And we as estate planners help you like carry out your wishes to achieve your goals through the proper type of trust.
Got you. So you would say all of them are very important.
Yes, for different reasons. So when I'm doing estate planning, I actually do a package.
Mhm.
I do a revocable living trust, pour over wills, durable powers of attorney. That's so somebody else can sign for you for things outside the trust if you're sick, if you can't do it yourself. Also, advanced healthcare directives. That's if you're in the hospital and you're unconscious, then somebody
Right.
else can talk to the doctor for you and access your medical records. I do the
Wow, that's
deed
very important.
transferring. Right? It's super
Yeah.
important. Yeah. You don't want the situation. I don't know if you ever heard of Terry Schiavo. She
Mm-mm.
was in Florida. It was a while back, but she was in a persistent vegetative state, and she didn't have an advanced healthcare directive. So her husband was saying she wanted one thing, let me go, and her parents were saying, no, no, she wanted another thing, keep me alive. And there
Is
was
she
this
on life
horrible
support?
on life support. Yeah, there was a
Wow.
horrible court battle for
That
a
gets
long time.
messy.
It was awful in many ways. So, get your healthcare directive together. If you're I know when I was in labor, right, and going to the hospital, they asked, "Do you have your healthcare directive?" And I'm like, "Yes, leave me alone." you know. But they should ask you at the hospital, and if you have a healthcare directive, and you should provide it. So
Mm.
we do all those documents because they all kind of work together doing different things. So it's not like one of them's more important than the other. You don't know which
Right.
situation you'll have. So, when we send drafts, there might be 100 pages for people to review, but they all address different situations.
Right. And I know you also mentioned, yes, there's templates, PDFs, or all that online and
Hmm.
everything, but it's really hard without that personal connection.
Yeah.
Like without having that insight from maybe setting up a meeting with you and really understanding instead of just copy paste, hey, just insert your first name here, we're good.
Right.
Like
Right.
there's just so much of like things that I need to know. Like I would never go out and try to purchase a house without a real estate person. I mean,
Hmm.
that's just me. Some
Yeah.
people are into that and
Hmm.
can do it and they'll mess up or they'll do a phenomenal job. I'm not trying to take a risk,
Right.
especially if my life depends on it, right? Or the
Yeah.
future depends on it. But
Exactly.
I don't know. How do you handle that when people come up to you with templates or anything like that? Or do you already
Right.
have your own?
Well, I have my own. I mean, the way I like to think about it is, that I like Nolo Press to introduce people to the concepts. So I think
Mhm.
it's very valuable. You can, look over those templates, try to understand more. Since it is a new language, the more you review it, the more helpful it is.
Totally.
However, when we're dealing with estate planning, there are actually 5 different types of taxes that are involved. So you have estate taxes, gift taxes, capital gains taxes, um, generation skipping transfer taxes, California property taxes. There might be a few other ones. So you don't know
Mhm.
which will be involved here. And a lot of
Yes.
times you don't know how good the trust is until somebody dies. And that could be right 30, 40 years later, at which time there could be a mess if it's not a good trust. And that's sometimes when I get pulled in, and it costs a whole lot more to get
Mhm.
an attorney to try to fix things on the back end after somebody's died than to clean it up while someone's still alive. So if somebody comes in
Mm.
and they already have a trust set up and they've already funded it, what I typically do is I do what's called a restatement and amendment, where I keep the name of the trust the same so you don't have to re, you know, put your assets in a different trust, but I update the insides because I'm very familiar with my forms and,
Right.
I've worked on them a lot. And it actually takes more time and money for me to review somebody else's form looking for any potential
Mm.
landmines that
Right.
might occur.
And how often do you recommend people update? these forms?
Yeah, well, I'd say about every 3 to 5 years to go and talk with your estate planning attorney, and especially if something major has happened in your life. If there's been a
Mm,
marriage, a birth, a death, someone who's gotten really sick, if you're about to go on a really big trip and leave your kids behind for the first time in a long time. Like, these are big events, life events that make people think about their estate plan. So usually that's when people come to us. Or maybe they've had a family member die and
mm,
they've gone through this horrible process where the trust wasn't properly drafted, or there were three
right.
co-trustees named, and it was like just there can just be really rough situations out there, and they go, I want to get this right so my kids don't have to go through what I went through.
Mm.
Yeah.
You're making me think about mine
Oh, good.
now. Now, speaking about, the estate planning, we talk about people my age, and I'm starting to think about mine.
Yeah.
We're also talking about people that are experiencing some major things going on in their life. Who should be thinking about estate planning, in your opinion?
Well, I think everybody should. I would say that most of my clients are older because people really start thinking about their mortality as they get into their 50s, 60s, sometimes even 70s.
Mm,
Until then, we just think we're going to live forever, and even if we don't say that out loud,
right.
a lot of times that's our attitude. So if you have stuff to protect and if you have people where you want it to go, then you should do the planning. Um, if somebody is, single and they have a lot of stuff and they don't care where their stuff goes,
Mm,
they still should do the planning because the people who would otherwise inherit it, it's going to take a lot longer and a lot more time and money to sort it out. So
mm.
you're really doing, as you're doing your estate planning, you're doing a gift to the next generation. And so actually, sometimes I have clients call me, or actually the kids of the clients call me, the adult kids, and they're
Yeah,
like, "Hey, my parents need to update their trust." I say, "Great, bring them in," because it's the kids who will benefit from this, and they
right.
recognize that and understand it.
Well, yeah, there's
Mhm.
like we need them to sign off now.
Exactly, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting because you have to care about the next generation. You have to care about what you're leaving behind. If you don't, it's going to be really hard to see value.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ways you can leave things for people in a protected manner. So you're not
Mm,
just leaving it to them and they become, the Lamborghini effect where they feel like, well, I don't have to work anymore. Like we have a lot of worries about our kids. Like once they get this money,
right.
are they going to continue to be hard workers, or are they just going to slack off, or is it all going to shoot up their nose and they're going to die? Like these are
Right.
valid concerns. So
Well,
you
here in Silicon Valley, you have people that have that have the Lamborghini effect, and their parents are still alive.
Oh, there can be that too, right? Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, I mean, we have, really powerful lifetime trusts that,
Right.
people can inherit, and once they hit a certain age, they can manage it themselves.
Mm,
But it's really good, so if they get divorced later
right.
on, it all stays with them, or if they have a creditor's issue, it offers some protection. So, there's different ways that you can leave things to the next generation, um, but you know that it's gonna really help them out.
I love that. Now, Ellen, who is your ideal client, and how can they get in contact with you?
So, we really like to offer value. So, if you have, and so I'd say, we like helping everybody, but especially if you have a slightly more complicated situation, um, you know, uh, often one or more kids, maybe some of the kids haven't turned out exactly as you've wanted. They
Mhm,
haven't, flown the coop yet, right? Um, or maybe unfortunately there's a lot of people who have endured a divorce,
mm,
with kids that are just a little bit more challenging, who need a little bit more help, because there's a lot of disagreements on how to parent those kids. So I have a lot of single parents who come to me. Sometimes they're able to coordinate with their ex-spouse on behalf of the kids, so that's wonderful when we see that, but sometimes it's not possible. So all age groups. When we're doing planning, we usually we charge a flat fee for everything. So you're
mm.
not worried about, am I going to get charged 2 hours if I make this phone call. We want everyone to understand what they're doing. I come from a family of lawyers and teachers. So, and I taught before. So I
Right.
like the process of explaining stuff to people and seeing the light bulb go off on their, above their head.
Right.
So people who aren't just looking for some form that they can sign, but
Hmm.
really want to understand the process and what's going to happen, we really try to walk you through that, walk you through the documents, and help you feel really comfortable so you can sleep at night. So you feel like, hey, I know what we just did, and now we
Hmm.
can celebrate.
I
That's
love that.
that to me is a great success story.
Yeah. Now, if I was going to ask you if you had to pick one, your favorite client,
Mm.
and I can give them to you right now,
Uh-huh.
this doesn't mean you won't get any other clients.
Right, right, right,
but
right.
what
Yeah.
is but what is that one favorite client that you just love working with?
Okay, so the characteristics, I think we all like feeling appreciated. So I think,
Yes.
somebody who really sees the value that we provide. Um, I think it's always nice to have our fees paid on time. So that's good too.
That is
You
good
know,
for business. Yes.
exactly. And someone who's really open about their family. I think that's so important that we're able to build that trust. It's kind of like, we were represent families for generations, honestly.
Hmm.
And so we want to be there for them, for the family. I like it when people come back and check in a couple of years later. We send out quarterly newsletters to keep people informed. So we want to keep
I
that
love that.
bond going.
Yeah,
So
totally.
that's super important too. I know, and as you said that, a few people came to mind, and I'm like, oh, I love them, because I love the clients that we work with.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun what I do. I actually get to talk with people all day,
Hmm.
and help them make some really difficult decisions,
Right.
and feel like I've made a difference.
Educating is big.
Yeah.
I educate my clients on everything, and just whether they just want the contract to sign off, I'm going to still educate you because I don't want you saying what did I sign off on. I want you to know
Right.
exactly what you're paying for. No
Hmm.
questions, no confusions.
It's so
So
true. It's so true. And in the end, they really thank you for it, because then they're going to have a neighbor who's
mm,
going to say, well, I have this situation. And then you'll be able to turn to them and say, well, my attorney just helped me through this. And these are the things that I've learned.
right,
And they can kind of pay it forward. And hopefully they'll also say, and here's her business card, give her a call.
totally.
I think that's the biggest compliment that we can get, is if someone, refers their friend to us, because then we know that we haven't just done the basics, but we've gone above and beyond for our clients.
Right. And just thinking about it, I do have friends that are having these conversations. So I do have some referrals for you
Ah,
that I'll send you offline.
great.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Now, my pleasure. And things like this, which
Mhm.
help me to understand, right? If I never asked a
Right,
question, I would have never understood
right.
who your ideal client is. Last question
Mm.
is, do you have any advice for listeners or viewers?
Wow. I guess my advice is to not be paralyzed by fear or indecision. A lot of times, what stops us from planning is the unknown. Just like with my husband and I, we didn't know who we'd name as guardian, and so that stopped us for many years from really putting something in place. Now,
Right.
luckily, we're still alive, so it's not too late, But I'd say one of the best things you can do is call an estate planner and have that conversation and say, "Well, this is my situation." Just put it all out on the table, and they'll probably charge you hourly for it or something, but you want that specific advice.
Hmm.
Here are my kids, here are their pros and cons, should one of them be the trustee of the other one's trust,
Right.
how would that work? Because there's so much knowledge that we glean from just years and years of practice and experience that we can provide. Well, these are the good things that could come out of that, but usually I recommend not, because of this. And so that can kind of help you get over that hump of indecision, and anything that stops you. I think when it's funny because when I'm talking to financial planners like you, Jesus, I love being able to provide information and stuff, but rarely is the time that I'm able to provide a referral to a financial planner, because usually the estate planner is the last one in line. You know,
Mm,
like, people have done everything else, but they want to avoid thinking about death, especially in the US. And there's other cultures too, but here
right,
we don't like talking about death that much, or disability, you know.
right. And I
Yeah.
think why my friends are thinking about it is because they have kids,
Hmm.
right? And then even those that don't have kids, they're thinking about where their investments are going to go,
Hmm.
right? Stock funds, everything like that, house. So
Right.
they still think about that stuff, and they want to make sure that everything's taken care of, and they don't leave a burden
Yes.
for their family,
Hmm.
right? Because I've seen it from experience where there's a ton of debt because bills weren't being paid properly, and the family suffers,
That's right.
right? And yeah, it's a little selfish, but at the same time, it's just irresponsible. Um,
Yeah. I usually encourage my clients, just, a few tips to write down, all of their accounts where they hold all their assets. So
mhm,
it's easier to find for the successor trustee. Maybe keep a binder. Usually when we have people sign their documents, we'll then scan everything, put it on a flash drive, and we include a fillable PDF form where they can just type out everything that they own. Otherwise, you're waiting for them to receive, a monthly statement in the mail. And now
mm,
those things are online. So how does the successor trustee find out about all of your stuff? The
right.
other thing that I suggest is, if you have a child with special needs, or just who needs extra consideration, to write something called a memo of intent, which is basically a letter to the successor trustee all about your kid.
Mm,
This is what makes them tick. These are the pros, the cons. These are the things they're, the foods they're allergic to. These are the things that make them super happy. So you're basically like downloading all the information that you know about your child
right.
to that next person, so that they don't have to use trial and error to get up and running, to really be able to help your child succeed.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Well, Ellen, we're out of time.
All right.
You're you're awesome. Thank you. You dropped a lot of knowledge on us.
Oh, great. I'm
I learned a
glad.
lot. I learned a lot. Um, but definitely learned a lot, and also just you providing a lot of valuable information, just around estate planning, around who should be thinking about it, your ideal client. I mean, we covered a lot of ground, so I had a lot of fun with this one.
Nice. Me too. Thanks so much. This is fun.
Yeah, and thank you again for your time.